When you think of King Kong, the first picture that comes to your mind is probably a giant ape climbing the Empire State Building, holding a frightened woman and swatting at airplanes. It's one of the most iconic images in movie history. But did you know that this legendary film was inspired by real-life events? I'm Polina Gif, and in this video you'll discover how the plot of King Kong was inspired by a real expedition and was originally intended to be a fake documentary. We'll explore how the film was supposed to feature a real gorilla fighting a Komodo dragon, the origins of the name King Kong, and why Kong was initially meant to be killed by lightning. The driving force behind King Kong is Marian C Cooper, a man whose life was filled with adventure and exploration. Born in Jacksonville, Florida, he lived a life straight out of an action movie. He was a war hero. He was shot down in both World War I and the Polish-Russo War, and even escaped from a prisoner of war camp. After all that, he returned home and became a reporter. But I imagine that after everything that he had been through, this job felt a bit too ordinary. So he joined an explorer team and traveled to exotic locations around the world. And he and his partner, a guy named Ernest Schoedsack, started to make documentary films of these travels. So this is how he sort of got into film. And then he even ended up in aviation when commercial flights were just starting. Talk about a colorful career, huh? While we might hesitate to change our jobs, Cooper jumped into new fields without a second thought. Anyway, this time we'll discuss his filmmaking era. Cooper and Schoedsack created what they called natural dramas. These were sort of documentaries, but with a fictional twist. They filmed real people and animals in exotic locations, and then edited the footage to create a story. They would edit the documentary footage to create a sort of fiction film based on real footage. These films became very popular and made a lot of money. One of their most famous projects was the 1927 film Chang, a Drama of the Wilderness, which documented their journey into the jungles of Siam, modern-day Thailand. This film showcased their talent for capturing the raw beauty and danger of untamed nature, a theme that would be central to King Kong. Eventually, they wanted to make a film about baboons. This happened after Cooper observed a tribe of primates and found something dramatic about them. But through the course of developing the idea, he switched his focus to gorillas, because he thought they had more personality. Now, let's talk about the second key person in this story, Cooper's friend, William Douglas Burton. Burton was a famous explorer who founded the Department of Animal Behavior at the American Museum of Natural History. In 1926, he embarked on an expedition to the Dutch East Indies island of Komodo. His mission was to capture footage of the mysterious Komodo dragons and attempt to bring back live specimens to the United States for the first time. This was not an easy task. Komodo dragons were considered almost mythical creatures at the time. They were viewed as legendary and mysterious. It was previously attempted to capture them, but proved to be too dangerous to be successful. But Burton was determined. He went with a small team that included his wife, a hunter, a cameraman, and a herpetologist. The last one is a scientist who studies reptiles and amphibians. Their adventures were full of excitement and danger. They managed to both film and hunt Komodo dragons. Upon arriving back home, they brought back lots of footage and even some dead dragons for the museum. If you've ever been to the American Museum of Natural History, you might have seen them on display. But what was really impressive is that they actually captured 2 live dragons and brought them to the Bronx Zoo in New York. So the expedition proved to be successful. The film of their adventure was a hit at private parties and sportsmen's clubs, and everyone was eager to see what was described as real-life monsters with their own eyes. Besides bringing back live Komodo dragons, Burton also came home with some incredible stories about these prehistoric creatures. And of course, he shared them with another passionate adventurer, his friend, Marian C Cooper. It's even speculated that Burton told a story about seeing a Komodo dragon fight a gorilla while he was studying them in the jungle. When Cooper heard this, he got super excited. He thought it would be really cool to let a gorilla fight a Komodo dragon and make a film about it. Like fight. Actually, fight. He thought that it would be really exciting. Eventually, he came up with a story about an expedition that went to an island upon which lived a gorilla and a Komodo dragon. And the gorilla would fight the Komodo dragon and then get captured. It would be brought back to the New York City, put in a zoo, and then it would escape and cause a lot of chaos before it finally got killed. That was the natural drama he wanted to do. And it sounds quite familiar already, right? By the way, there were no gorillas on Komodo, but that didn't bother him. He wanted to go to Africa, film real gorillas there, capture one, take it to Komodo Island and let it fight with a Komodo dragon there. Natural dramas, remember? You might think, but what's the point? Like, who would believe this documentary if there are no actual gorillas on Komodo? And here is the thing. Back then, gorillas were also almost mythical creatures. The first Western person saw a gorilla in the very early 20th century, or maybe later in the 19th century. So people just didn't know that much about them. That's important because Cooper knew he could kind of make them into whatever he wanted. At some point, he also wanted to have the gorilla kidnap a woman from the expedition. That was kind of the myth of gorillas back then. It was believed that they were stealing women and running off with them into the jungle. This is also a quick reminder that if you're enjoying this video so far, please hit the like button. It really helps me as a small YouTuber because when you hit the like button, it tells the YouTube algorithm that I make decent videos and it helps me grow. And overall, of course, if you like learning more about movies, TV shows and animation, please make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. But back to King Kong. Around that time, there was a film called Ingagi that gained huge popularity. It was claimed to be a documentary that showed an African tribe that offered women as sacrifices to gorillas. Yep, that's what the film was about, offering women as sacrifices to gorillas. And what do you think gorillas were supposed to do with these sacrifices? Eat them? Play with them? No, something that is way worse and more disgusting. Yep, that horrible thought you're having right now, that's exactly what the film showed. It was basically this exploitation film promoted as a documentary, when in fact it was far from it. In the reality, the film featured a guy in an ape suit sexually assaulting a woman, which was shocking and inappropriate even by 1930 standards. The whole appeal of the movie was this disturbing angle. And keep in mind that people believed it was real, and that's why everyone wanted to see it. It made a lot of money because it had an ape having sex with a woman, basically. Also, the film is very racist. Supposedly it's in Africa, so they hired a lot of African Americans to portray Africans and then did it in horribly stereotypical ways. Some people think that Ingagi also had a big influence on Kong, that somehow Cooper got inspired by it. From what I read, it's likely not true, but who knows. So, after having the plot outlined, Cooper tried to get funding for his wild expedition idea. But the Great Depression hit, and no one wanted to finance such an ambitious project. His plan to capture a gorilla and film a fight with a Komodo dragon had to be shelved, at least for the time being. In the early 1930s, through a series of events, Cooper ended up working as an assistant to David O. Selznick, the head of RKO Pictures. His job was to review projects and advise Selznick on whether they should continue or not. During this time, Cooper met Willis H OBrien, the pioneer of stop-motion animation as a feature film technique. O'Brien had gained fame for his work on the 1925 film The Lost World. It tells a story about explorers who go to a South American plateau and discover dinosaurs. They bring them back to London. One dinosaur escapes and causes chaos. In the mid-1920s, that film was a big hit, and O'Brien had been hired by the RKO Pictures to do a new film, Creation, which was supposed to be a sort of sequel to The Lost World. Explorers would again find dinosaurs and they would interact with them and bring them back to the society, that sort of thing. Cooper didn't find the project very interesting, but he was really impressed by O'Brien's animation skills. He started to think that with O'Brien's skills, he didn't actually need to go to Africa and Komodo to shoot his Gorilla vs. Komodo Dragon movie. It could be done on the lot at the studio. He could do it on sound stages, and O'Brien could animate the ape. Whether this realization affected his decision is debatable, but Cooper decided to scrap Creation, even though 20 minutes of footage had already been shot at a significant cost. And he chose to draw the attention of the studio to his movie instead. With O'Brien's expertise in stop-motion animation, Cooper reimagined his story. Cooper's original idea was that the ape in his film was going to be 12 feet tall, because people thought that gorillas were 12 feet tall back then. He wasn't trying to make it gigantic, he just thought that's how tall gorillas are. However, when he saw the dinosaur model tests for Creation, he thought, wouldn't it be cool to have the gorilla fight the dinosaurs? That would be better than a Komodo dragon. And this is how Kong became gigantic, because there's nothing in the records before that to suggest that he wanted to do a gigantic ape. He probably just couldn't resist having him fight dinosaurs. Cooper was always a showman at heart. He loved using new gimmicks in movies, but only if they truly added something special. He loved anything that made movies unique and different from stage plays and novels. Looking at the reimagined story, you can see how Burton's expedition inspired not only the idea, but the whole plot of the movie. See for yourself. A team of explorers captures a mysterious monster from a remote island. world and turns it into a tourist attraction in New York City. Cooper may have taken other elements from real life, including Burton's wife being a counterpart to the actress Fay Wray. The expedition may have even played a part in the name of King Kong. You see, Cooper liked one-word titles for his natural dramas. One was called Grass, one was called Chang, another one was called Rango. He had an affection for short, to-the-point names for his films. As for how he came up with Kong, people said that he either modified Congo or that a letter K in Kong was a subtle nod to Komodo dragons. Unfortunately, we don't know how it was for sure, but I think it's quite clear that he used the expedition as an inspiration here. The King part was actually David O. Selznick. During production, the film went through several titles. It started as Kong, then became The Beast, then The Eighth Wonder, and back to Kong during filming. And then David O. Selznick later suggested an alternative title for a more majestic appeal, and added King to Kong right before the film was released. The iconic ending of King Kong is one of the most memorable scenes in movie history. But it wasn't always going to be that way. Initially, they planned for Kong to climb the Chrysler Building. In the original ending, there were no airplanes. Kong was supposed to climb to the top of the building and get struck by lightning, which would kill him. But then, as they were writing the script, the Empire State Building opened. And you know Cooper, he always wanted things bigger and better. So he thought, what's more impressive than the Chrysler Building? The Empire State Building. And what's more exciting than lightning? Fight airplanes. That's how we ended up with the iconic scene of Kong battling fight airplanes on top of the Empire State Building. King Kong premiered in 1933 and set the standard for monster movies. Its success led to numerous remakes, sequels, and adaptations. Kong became a real cultural icon, appearing in films, TV shows, and video games. The 1933 original remains the gold standard, but each new iteration continues to pay homage to the adventurous spirit and imagination that brought Kong to life. Speaking of iconic monsters, another legendary creature that became as popular as King Kong and already faced him in battle multiple times is of course Godzilla. If you enjoyed learning about King Kong, you don't want to miss my video about Godzilla. Let me know in the comments what you liked about the story that I shared today the most and why you personally like King Kong. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hear more stories about movies, and I hope to talk to you soon. Пока-пока!